Thank you all for joining us today, despite these complicated days. My name is Natalie. I'm Director of Value Creation at Coomer Capital, a growth fund investing in late-stage companies, and AppsFlyer is a portfolio company of ours. We're very excited about this upcoming discussion about customer onboarding. And after, I would say, about a year of internal discussions within our portfolio, we saw that customer onboarding is crucial for company success. The onboarding phase is the first time a customer meets your company, and a successful process can really help determine your ongoing relationship. This is why we were so keen on creating this panel with world-class onboarding leaders. So thanks again, and Eliran.
Hi everyone, my name is Eliran, Director of Strategy and Business Development at TLV Partners, early stage VC. We have around 40 portfolio companies. Ever After, disclaimer, is a portfolio company of TLV Partners. So we'd like to dive in first by knowing our speakers. So with us today, Raul Voa, Gali, Kedar, Ziv, Peled, and Noah Danon. Hello, everyone. We'll start with you, Raul. Thank you so much for joining us today. Raul is a co-founder and CEO of Superhuman. Please take 2-3 minutes to present yourself and Superhuman. And we have like a small presentation just to show a few bullets of your onboarding process. And we're going to do it with all the speakers.
Okay, sounds good. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Rahul. I'm the founder and CEO of Superhuman, where we make the fastest email experience in the world. Our customers get to their inbox about twice as fast as before, reply to their important email sooner, and many of them see inbox zero for the first time in years, which, as you can imagine, is pretty life-changing. Now, as I think is fairly widely known, we massively overinvest in our onboarding. We give every single customer a 30-minute one-to-one video call with one of our wonderful onboarding specialists. These folks are experts in Superhuman and also in productivity more generally. Now, I've seen a lot of companies in our space get this wrong. I no longer believe in the traditional launch. Let's say, for example, you've built a new email client or a task manager or a calendar app. The surface area for these products is absolutely massive, bigger than almost any domain that you could think of. Now, what this means is you also get massive surface area for bugs, as well as massive variability in how users want to use the product. Now, most companies would just launch their app, and because the demand for these products is so high, they would quickly get tens of thousands of users. But guess what? These users will quickly find bugs, the company would rapidly be overwhelmed, they would not be able to fix the issues fast enough. And so these users will get disappointed, they'll churn out of the product, and they'll tell everybody about their experience. Now, in my mind, this is the very definition of a net detractor. So I think it's significantly better to do what we do, which is to onboard customers at a measured but fast and increasing pace every week. You will then have the bandwidth to fix any issues they find, and you can focus on making them exceptionally happy.
Perfect. Thank you, Raul. Ziv, stage is yours. You're on mute, so we can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Natalie. Yeah. So I'm Ziv. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at AppsFlyer. I've been with the company for almost 8 years. And for us, the onboarding is the most important stage. And I connect very directly to what Raul said. In my slide, if you can put it on, I mentioned there a quote of how we make a customer feel. And I actually got onboarded on Superhuman 2 years ago, and because of that onboarding experience, I will never forget that. And this is why I'm a true advocate of Superhuman. And I think that what we want to achieve here with onboarding. I think that's exactly that. We want to build advocates from day one. This is what they remember. This is what's determined their onboarding. So again, if I can have my slides, then I can explain it, but
people will see your slides in a second. They see the slide.
Great. Yeah. Cool. So again, as I said, the quote I already mentioned, but in the end, the three main steps for us, we want to establish trust. I think, and I'll speak about it later, we really want to understand the business desired outcomes of our customers, why they chose we are in B2B SaaS, in a little bit more complex than superhuman solutions. So it's very important for us to understand the business desired outcomes of our customers, and then we want to deliver on that value and build long-term deep relationships. Thanks.
Thanks, Ziv. Gali, hey, please tell us about yourself and about Sisense.
So hi, everyone, and thanks for joining. I am the chief customer at Sisense for the past 6 years. For those who don't know Sisense, so we are an analytics platform. Our goal is to infuse analytics everywhere. And our main focus is on embedding analytics within the product of our customers. So almost any product today needs to get insights on their own product for their end users. So we are the platform that can provide that smoothly white label into customers' products. So obviously, in such complex integration, onboarding is a key part of that. So even before the onboarding, I do want to mention that customer obsession is a key value. And I know that every customer success organization will state that this is how they operate. I think at Sisense, it's very much visible and it's part of our DNA. Our entire management is measured on NPS as an example. So when we go into the onboarding process, it is a complex deployment. It's not, Raul mentioned the weeks of value. In our case, it takes longer because we embed into the code or the product of our customers. So usually it takes between 4 to 6 months until we go live. And our main focus is to drive value as fast as possible. Again, it takes a few months, but our goal eventually is to go live and ensure that customer gets value and adoption of the analytics portion of the product. And then the second part will be to enable our customer. So over the years, we've changed our onboarding. So at this point of time, it is paid onboarding, depends on the complexity and the customer tier. And it involves several functions. We have the CSM, who is the supervisor of the entire journey of the customers, but then we have other functions, more technical, less business, which are focused on the actual onboarding, defining the success plan, tracking it along the way, defining the success criteria of the onboarding and so on.
Thank you, Gali. Hi, Noah. Please introduce Ever After.
Hi, everyone. I'm Noah, the co-founder and CEO of Ever After. Ever After is a collaboration platform for customer-facing teams. So we were lucky to work with amazing customers during COVID on their onboarding experience. This is one of the most common use cases out there. And it was amazing because I think companies today have more innovative onboarding processes than ever, even though Superhuman had this amazing onboarding process before everyone else. So it's not a COVID thing, but for many other companies, innovation around onboarding rise through the year. And I would be happy to share more about the trends that we see in onboarding and how companies took COVID to the next level of onboarding experiences and make a lemonade out of it. So we'll talk more about it later.
Thanks a lot, Natalie.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. So we actually divided the panel into 3 main discussion points. And the first is segmentation. And before we start, I just want to say to our panelists, feel free to comment to each other. This is an open discussion. So Ziv, let's start with you. When building a customer onboarding process, what should a company take into consideration?
Yeah, thanks. I think it's very important to understand the segmentation of customers. I think in early stage startups, it's important to onboard all customers as best as possible. We'll go out even the smallest customers. I think when you grow, you start segmenting customers and starting to really shape those enterprise onboardings. And there, I think that the business desired outcomes it's really important as early as possible, as you can understand why customers really bought your solution, what they're trying to achieve in their words and in their KPIs, in their goals. And if we can achieve that very focused, companies at some stage their product are getting more and more complex with more and more features, you can really be a non-focused. I think that it's very important to be focused on what the customer wanted to achieve. And then when you achieve that, I think then it's the time to develop that relationship that I'm speaking about a lot.
Great, thanks. Raul, Gali, do you want to share your thoughts on this?
Sure, I can jump in. With respect to segmentation, I think that companies should consider segmenting across persona, across industry, and across size. Now, industry and size, I think, are fairly straightforward, but for persona, I think there's a lot of nuance. And I like to start with the highest expectation customer. This is the most discerning person in your target demographic. They're the kind of person who will enjoy your product for its greatest benefits, and they will help spread the word. Now, most importantly, others aspire to be like them because they seem clever, judicious, and insightful. And the reason all of this is so important is this is the key to unlocking word of mouth growth, which if you look at any major success story in technology, is actually the reason why these companies succeed. Now, there is actually a way to discover what your highest expectation persona is, and it forms the basis of the superhuman product market fit engine that I wrote about a few years ago. And if you haven't seen that piece, you can Google superhuman product market fit and you'll find it. Now, once you've got your personas, you can then create different onboarding strategies per segment. That's the thing that I think most people miss. So it's persona, industry, and size.
Great, thank you. Gali.
So on top of what Ziv and Raul mentioned, I think I will refer to 2 more aspects. First one is the KPIs. What is a successful onboarding process? I think it's important to decide where you focus the energy, where you focus the entire process. So make sure that you don't have more than 2, maybe 3 KPIs that will guide you throughout the entire process. That's one. And the other thing I would refer to is think about the extreme cases. What cannot work? What do you do in case the customer is going south, does not follow your process? How do you say no to customers? So when you develop your onboarding playbook, take into account of actually the cases that you need to work differently than your main onboarding process.
Thanks. No, maybe you can add here if can a company really develop or work with a few different processes or strategies?
So it's a big challenge in small teams when a startup is in early stage, then everybody is doing everything, including onboarding. And as Ziv said, onboarding, you onboard every single customer, even if there's a company of a single person. And then one of the goals that we see, because those are usually A players on the CS team, right? At this point, you have the luxury to hire the best people out there. And then one of the goals there would to help them start understanding the segmentation and create the materials to be able to get processes in place and start figuring this out. And it's very open usually with those teams, that even though now they give like the best experience and for everyone, they also need on the side usually like an extra job to figure out how to have lower touch with some of them and so on. So they're basically experimenting, and then this is the way they create segments at a later stage. So the goal of the team, the CS team in the early stage startup, would be to give like the amazing experience, because there are gaps in the product, so CS needs to cover for them in the early stage, but then also to get into this understanding of how it should be divided, what can be automated or scaled in some way, and then you can scale the CS team accordingly. And it's a challenge, and you need the best people on the team to figure this out early so you can segment correctly. And Ziv was there in AppsFlyer from almost day one, I think, to figure out the whole structure throughout the years. So this is a master work to get it right.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think Raoul, it would be really interesting to hear from you about really the balance between personalization and automation in your onboarding process.
We actually personalize the journey all the way through. Now, at the top of the funnel, the personalization it's quite automated in order to facilitate scale. And at the bottom of the funnel, the personalization is actually highly manual in order to deliver the best possible experience. This is where we go over the top with one-to-one onboardings. Now, we're constantly working on both ends, both making the top of the funnel more automated and also making the onboarding experience even more special and personalized. So as there is this spectrum from automation at the top of the funnel to personalization at the bottom of the funnel.
And how do you support exponential growth? Well, it would be interesting to hear from you, Gali, Ziv as well.
Raise lots and lots of venture capital. No, seriously, if you're aiming, if you're aiming to grow exponentially and also deliver world-class onboarding, which is presumably why we're all here, I don't think you can do it without deep pockets. You're going to have to spend ahead of revenue. You're going to have to overinvest. Now, once you have the money, you can then figure out how to very quickly grow and train and develop a team. And the best way to do that is to hire a world-class executive leadership team. So step one, raise tons of venture capital. Step two, hire world-class executives.
I think I will add around scale is there is a limit of how much you can do by your own resources. And at some point you will need to scale through partners. So the way we do at Sisense is we have our own PS group within CS that owns the onboarding process, but at the same time within CS, we also have the partner success group that they own to recruit and develop implementation partners network that they can take some of the workload of the onboarding. So the way we do that, at some point you need to decide, okay, which customer do I dedicated resources of my own PS and which one do I move to partner success to some of our partners in the network. And all in all, what we have decided as a strategy is that our strategic customers, we want them close to us. Therefore, we will prefer to onboard them directly to our own resources, while the rest can go through our partner network. And it seems to work pretty well.
Yeah, I led from our case. I agree with Raoul. The executive is important. I think the team, the individual contributors and the team that is growing is more important even. I think that we grew, we are now 190 customer success managers in 16 offices. I think on one side, the growth of that team and the growth individually. So we're currently 40 leaders. I think 36 grew from individual contributors. I think that's very, very important because it's people that they were customer success managers, they onboarded customers, then they've been team leaders and they still manage customers. So they were leading by example and then grew to be even VPs, and I was a senior customer success manager once. I think that's really, really important.
I couldn't agree more. Just to add my own 2 cents, we've tried to balance roughly 50-50 internal managers and external managers, because then you get a nice blend of what you don't want is just not being able to see your own flaws. So we have a nice blend that way of people who intimately know the customer, but also folks who've been at other classic Silicon Valley companies who can help us level up our game.
We absolutely try to hire from the outside, but in many cases, we were not that lucky and not successful. So for us, that group from within works more.
Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to say that for our audience, we'll have later on, like 10 minutes, we'll open up the discussion for your questions. Because we're jumping to the second topic, which is more speaking about trends and tools. Ziv and Gali, so customer onboarding is a process that evolves over time. We spoke about it. So how did the customer onboarding process look like a few years ago? What have you learned, and how is things changed at your company during time? What can you tell us about it?
So I can start. So actually, in a 6 years journey at Sisense, our onboarding process dramatically changed. So it usually evolves with the type of the customers as the company is growing and so on. So 6 years ago, it was part of the support group. We had also, you know, at their free time, they used to do a few hours of onboarding, not too professional, to be honest. Then we separated the team, and at some point we have created a support group and then a PS group. So if at the beginning it was all complimentary as part of the license and just few hours back then, as we go up market and we had thousands of customers and the product itself became more complex, more integrated, we realized that from few hours we need to move to stronger handholding. And it's not just the onboarding. We actually would like to stay close to our customers throughout the entire journey. Obviously, it depends on, you know, the customer tier and the complexity. But for our most strategic customers, the onboarding is just the beginning. So for a few months, it's very intense relationship, and we invest mutually a lot of hours in the onboarding. But even when we go live, we don't end the handholding. We would like to stay in the picture and work on the next use case and make sure that we drive the adoption with our customers. One major thing that happened to us next, thanks to COVID, is before that, for our strategic customers, the first part of the onboarding was on site. And guess what? At some point, no more on site. So we had to evolve ourselves and make sure that we continue to drive adoption and value even remotely. So past year, all of our onboarding are back to be just online without the need to be on site.
For us, it started like a startup of 10 people, and like we just took calls, demo to customers, and then the onboarding was the week after, and each CSM did it their way. And then at some point we started to bring in more technology, starting from the basic Salesforce and making sure that we have all the information in one place. And as we went that road, we added more and more technologies. Some worked, some didn't. I think it's really important that to understand that as we grow that enterprise onboarding, we really built a white glove process of, we want to get the customer with the minimum value in 90 days. We know what we want to have in that meantime, and then I think what we've done last year was really amazing. Like we have decks for each of those meetings. We started with a customer portal that we developed ourselves, and then now we're onboarding ever after. And we really wanted, it was really important for us that in Salesforce, just like a sales manager is managing an opportunity, that we are managing that onboarding with those stages. I think, and it's maybe something here that is not only about tools, but I think that we want to connect with the customer on the other side. We want to achieve that milestone. It's a milestone for us, but it's a milestone for them. They bought that solution. They wanted that solution to work for them. I think we need also to connect it emotionally and celebrate that milestone. So that's why in the end of that process, we have an onboarding business review, just like a quarterly business review, but to celebrate the successful onboarding. So I think that's really, really important.
Thank you. Raul, would you like to take us through some changes in your company or even companies over time?
Sure. Well, I'll focus on Superhuman in the interests of time. And we had 4 discrete phases, actually. And I think this is a repeatable playbook for consumer companies like ours. So what I can do is I can take folks through each phase. Now, phase 1, I think the product founder should do the onboardings. This is usually the CEO. The goal is to test whether the product is ready. And I did the first several hundred onboardings for Superhuman myself. Now, do not worry about how long these onboarding takes. I would often take 2 hours. And collect user metrics. What is their engagement, their retention, their product market fit score, their NPS, their virality? And we found that for all these metrics, we were beating industry benchmarks to the point where we were category leading. That's a good sign. That's a sign that you should continue to phase 2. Now, I ramped to about 6 onboardings like this per week, just slightly more than 1 per day. It's not that fast. Now, if after around 200 onboardings, you have great metrics, you know that onboarding could work for your company. That's when we went into phase 2. Now, in phase 2, another senior teammate takes the lead. And the primary goal is to show that somebody other than the founder can onboard and still produce great metrics. And so I asked our head of growth to do this. And the secondary goal is to start scaling the experience. We got onboardings from about 2 hours to 1 hour without impacting metrics. Now, our head of growth ramped to 20 onboardings per week this way. And I would say that if after another 200 onboardings, you still have great metrics again, then you know that onboarding works even when it is not a founder. And so in that case, I would recommend you move on to phase 3. Now, in phase 3, you build a full stack growth team. Everybody on this team does everything, as crazy as that sounds: demand generation, lead qualification, customer support, and of course, onboardings. Now, the primary goal is to show that somebody other than a senior teammate can onboard and still produce great metrics. You might be wondering, why go full stack? Well, the reason is you probably don't have the resources to specialize in all those functions at this point. There are also some secondary goals, which are to scale and to create the training plans for the next phase. So for us, we hired 3 growth generalists, and they got onboardings from 1 hour to about 45 minutes without impacting any of the metrics. And personally, I would expect a growth generalist to do about 20 onboardings per week. Now, if after a few months you still have great metrics, then you know that onboarding works even by new employees at some scale. And that brings us on to the last phase, which is phase 4. Now, in this phase, you build a whole team of onboarding specialists who do nothing but onboarding. And they will become able to onboard better than anybody else, even the founder. Now, the primary goal here is to scale revenue whilst keeping everything magical and delightful. During this phase, we got onboardings from about 45 minutes to about 30 minutes without impacting metrics. This is the onboarding experience that most of our customers have experienced. And it is super important to comprehensively train each onboarding specialist because they are now the new face of your company. So at Superhuman, we have a very intensive training program. It lasts about 8 weeks. And once fully ramped, an onboarding specialist can do 35 to 45 onboardings per week. So this playbook isn't going to work for every company. It'll work for companies like ours. And those are the 4 key phases that I would advise companies to step through.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Noah, I'd like to ask about trends from the recent year. So since COVID, what are you seeing these days, and what do you think is here to stay in terms of trends that you see?
So we see COVID made a good impact on onboarding, because moving to remote caused many companies to rethink about the materials and the process, and it forced people to just figure it out again and take everything they knew so far and get it to the next level. So it was a challenge moving from face to face, but then it also created like a more structured process and easier to get meetings and more people from the company to join, and things that and like more like short sessions and so on. Like so good things happened to many companies. And also because everything became remote, then CS could start the journey sooner and start joining sales, like the end of the sales during the time, because now it's online and don't need to go there, so it's easier for them to join. So it became more of a team effort, a real team effort. It's easier to get a product in the room because it's a Zoom room, and so on. So it changes this in a good way, we think. And also, yeah, I agree with Ziv that onboarding is a milestone, and now it's very obvious that it is. So companies celebrate it and do things that make it really very unique. And then they need to iterate on the onboarding process. So now they have this going through more iterations on onboarding of more people and more implementations. But now it's more structured. So this is good. And we did a lot of research on. We have like even an ebook on onboarding there for many people that gave their insights on. So you're welcome to read it as well.
Thank you. Yeah, Natalie?
Yeah, so Raul, you took us through like the journey from when you started the onboarding process yourself. I think it's interesting to hear, are there any additional teams, or Ziv and Gali, also hear from you, that are also involved in the onboarding process, or maybe teams that shouldn't be involved in the onboarding process?
Yeah, good question. I think that customer support should absolutely be involved. You want a very seamless handover from the team that's doing the onboarding, if they're a different team, to the team that's going to reactively engage to any issues that the customers may have. And that one's fairly obvious and normal. Perhaps less obvious is engineering. And we actually made the very non-traditional decision right from the beginning of the company to have customer support, which we actually call customer delight, report into engineering. Now, the reason for that is so that as and when customers report bugs, which are an inevitable fact of life in building technology companies, it's right there in the organization that can fix it immediately. And it's just this kind of magic. You break down any kind of organizational siloing that might be happening, even unintentionally, and you get to a better product faster. So I would say definitely customer support, definitely engineering, maybe even consider having them in the same organization. And as for who shouldn't be involved, I mean, honestly, I can't think of a good reason to exclude anybody. Those are the two that come to mind. And I would say the nuance probably depends on the company. But if someone is interested in getting involved, there's probably a good reason to include them.
So I am a big believer in focus. You've seen it on my previous comments. So therefore, I think that the way to answer this answer is to think about CS, to hire, Ziv and Raul mentioned it earlier, to hire the CS group and the exec from early stages of the company for the purpose of focus. Within CS, decide who is doing what, So unlike Raul, I will actually say separate between support and the onboarding. And again, it depends on the complexity, but also make sure who not to involve. Actually, R&D engineering, stay out of that. Focus on delivery, on fixing the bugs, and do not be involved on the onboarding. Pre-sales, focus on POC, quick and dirty type of POC, and let the CS group and the onboarding team focus on how to build it right, how to ensure the long-term adoption and value.
Ziv, anything you want to add here?
No, I'm good.
Great. So we're actually in our last topic, which is teams and collaborations. And as we have a lot of questions from the audience, we'll keep this one short. So how would you define a successful onboarding process? And how can you measure it over time? Maybe if you can share either stories or interesting use cases from your companies, that would be great. Ziv, let's start with you then.
Yeah, so for me, I think first of all, Raul mentioned before, and I guess everyone agrees, we do define KPIs. We want to know what we want to achieve. In 2021, we took two main KPIs and we combine it, and now we measure the median days to value. In addition to that, I always, when I look at KPIs, I want to look also on something that is more emotional, something that is maybe less measurable. NPS is a nice measure, but I think I relate to Zappos and wow, the experience. I think that if we can, we set expectations, and if we can achieve those expectations, and if we focus on the business desired outcomes, but then if we can in that process also wow the experience of the customer. So we achieved the onboarding in 2 weeks instead of 90 days. And it was a very important for them to do it as fast as possible. I think it really builds that trust. And in the end, there's a saying from Salesforce that they call their customers, their important customers for life. We want our customers to be our customers for life. And I think that we can maybe analyze that. I think that when we do that, when we do that best onboarding, and we sometimes wow the experience, and we build those amazing relationships, then the customer is ours for long. And in B2B SaaS, even if the customer is moving companies, so probably they will want Sisense again, probably they will want AppsFlyer again, and Superhuman, they are not even leaving, they just take the software with them.
I think I will refer to one aspect of a successful onboarding, which is because it's all about people. Eventually, there are humans behind every onboarding. So there are relationships that we need to build, trust to gain. So I think a successful onboarding is when we see that the champion of the project is being promoted. Sometimes it can be, exactly the opposite, when there are layoffs and you see suddenly that your champion is out of the company. That's big red flag. But the opposite case, a successful project, when he is promoted, you know that you've changed the company. You did something impactful for that specific human and also to his company.
Rahul, Noah, do you want to share anything else on this topic? So Elion, maybe we'll move to some questions from the audience.
Yeah, so we have a lot. Give me a second. So regarding the same topic, I think, what was a major factor in failed onboarding and how can we avoid those? Asked by Shai Riplat. If anyone want to answer. How to avoid failed onboarding.
I think I can start. Shai is part of Sisense. Sorry, Shai.
Okay.
And thank you for the question. So I think one example I can give that happened to me actually last quarter was the renewal point. But before that, one of the unicorn companies in the US really strong company. When they started with Sisense, they had very strong development team. So they said that they don't need onboarding. They can do it all by themselves. They know where to go. They are so much self-convicted on their own success. And, you know, it was true. They had very strong teams, but they are developers of their own expertise, of their own world. They are not expert of Sisense. So at the beginning, they started by themselves, and it failed. It didn't work. And, you know, at some point we realized that we will lose that customers unless we take over. We had to involve the exec. I was involved, and, you know, we had to do an exec-to-exec thing and say, let's start from scratch. Let's reset the relationship. Let's reset the project. In order to be successful, we need to work together. And it made a difference. And the reason why I said it was last quarter, so last quarter, it was the renewal point, and it was with huge upsell opportunity as well. But if we wouldn't find it right at the beginning, that they will go very south, we could have ended as a big churn.
Thank you, Gali. Another question. How many accounts does the average CSM handle? If anyone wanted to take this one.
For us, we are managing around 20 customers. We're now doing a new segmentation, but currently the average is around 20 customers. I wouldn't do more than 3 onboarding at a time. For us, onboarding, as I said before, can take 90 days, and it can be sometimes more complex. So 3-4 onboardings tops.
I think this heavily depends on the segment. I've seen in companies that sell to SMB CSMs managing hundreds, 500 customers, and at the other end of the spectrum in enterprise, perhaps 5. Our customers onboard quite literally, sorry, our onboarding specialists onboard thousands of people a year. So it really depends on the velocity of your motion.
Thank you. Natalie, do you see anything?
Yes. Are you using any health scores? And if so, which systems do you use in order to calculate these health scores?
Yeah.
Maybe can anyone share? Yeah.
I'll take that. I'll try to be short. I don't believe in health scores. I think for enterprise customer success managers, managing any account above 80K a year, the customer success manager should know the customer. It's good to use early warning systems. It's definitely good you should have a lot of data, and you should find early indicators for something that goes wrong. But I believe in red flags. So we have a process in Salesforce to open a red flag about an account. It can be, you know, I'll give an example. One example here. You might lose your champion. So maybe the champion in your customer is now moving, and you don't know if the next champion is going to be a pro apps buyer. And so it's very important to get that insight as early as possible. Maybe even reinstate the successor by the current champion, or you'll have a lot of risk with that account.
I'll provide the consumer counterpoint to that, because I think we lean 100% in the opposite direction. We use a ton of metrics to measure everything. There's at least 5 categories of thing that we measure. So first, there's leading indicators like activation rates of people adopting the product. Then there's measures of efficacy like retention, product market fit score, NPS. And then there's measures on growth like virality and referral rate. And then finally, there's measures on margin or unit economics like LTV to CAC or payback period. Well, actually, there's one more thing, attainment metrics. So what is the attainment of the team? How many customers are they onboarding per week? And I think if you're running a super high velocity motion, where you have, where one onboarding specialist is managing thousands of customers per year, you'll want to lean really heavily into all of those numbers and drive every single one of them.
Thank you, everyone. would onboarding training videos like a course or program help creating a successful onboarding experience for customers? Without a name.
So I can answer that. I think, again, depends on the product and the complexity. But even in our case, where as you've seen by now, it is more complex product, there is definitely a room for videos and for online training. The way we do that is, again, going back to the question of scale. Some of the basic stuff of how to operate Sisense, no need for a customized one-on-one session with a customer. You can definitely do an online training that covers all the basics. So then you focus the time and energy of both the customer and our onboarding people on the customizations, on the more specific stuff that the customers will need.
Thank you. Noah?
Videos do work, of course, and the good thing is that because they are like you can consume them whenever it works for you. Then you can split them into phases and do like a few weeks of materials going into customers. It's also very useful in onboarding new team members, which is also, we haven't talked about this part of onboarding, but you sometimes start from scratch, and then this is very useful as well. The challenge is the ownership of those, who updates those, who keep them relevant. Is it in the CS team or not? So it's a different challenge, but in scale, it's very relevant.
There is another question here from the audience. So how do you, relating to your topic, Noah, you just said, so how do you choose customer success reps and how do you motivate them? Anyone want to take this one?
Sure, I'll take that. I think when hiring customer success managers, definitely I'm looking for people with great presentation skills, storytelling skills. I'm looking for people that are able to build relationships, that are able to first very fast relate to other people, but then they can also develop that deep relationship. So, and I think that in B2B SaaS, we need to, maybe it's important to mention, so there's always two dimensions. So on one side, there's a very professional dimension. You really want to connect with your customer, understand their KPIs, their challenges. Customer success manager means that I want the other company to be successful, but at the same time, I'm also helping that individual to be successful in their job, and they can get promoted, and they can also get another job later on in another company if our product helps them. On the other side, there's a personal dimension. So if someone is really, really good in that, I think that they will be a very good customer success manager. And that, in addition to everything that is related to technology and the product, of course.
Thank you, Ziv. Anyone else? I have another question. I think maybe we touched it before, but someone is asking, Gu, I think the name, should onboarding and implementation come under CS or product function?
I can take it. I think in B2B SaaS, absolutely should be under customer success. I guess in B2C or in companies that are between B2B to B2C, so companies like Slack, for example, or Asana, I think it can be maybe in product or maybe in the middle. But for us, B2B SaaS, pure B2B SaaS should be in customer success.
I 100% agree. As an example of a company that's a little bit more on the consumer side, we actually consider ourselves a prosumer company. Even though we sell to individuals, about 50–60% of our seats are ultimately paid for by the companies because folks are expensing it or it's paid for directly. I think this comes down to company values and DNA. It doesn't necessarily have to happen in product, but I've worked really hard to make Superhuman a product company so that everyone thinks like a product manager and thinks in the way that we do products, even if they don't live in the product organization. And that's a way to sort of reward and instill really deep thinking, deliberate action and thoughtfulness all across the organization.
Great. In some departments, like in CS department, you see product specialists that are very focused on the product and can jump in and help in complex products, of course. But I think product management as a department should be separated. But product specialists can and should be part of customer success, especially in complex products and so on.
And another interesting question here is, what do you think is the place of customer education in onboarding? Do you put any specific emphasis on educating your customers? So Raul, would you like to share anything here?
A huge amount, absolutely. So some of our most effective techniques are our onboarding drip campaign. And we actually built this up very organically over time. Essentially, every single time we've built a new feature, even if it's a tiny little one, we write a very short email about it, usually 5 sentences. We create an animated GIF that shows it off in practice, and then we send it to our entire audience. Now, we don't just stop there. We also add it to the onboarding flow. So now we have probably about 45, 50 emails in that campaign, which when a user signs up, they then receive over the next 2 months. So it's directly from me to that user. And for the first 2 months, they then have this daily hit of dopamine where they learn something new that they probably didn't have time to learn in their onboarding about how Superhuman can help them succeed. So I think that's one thing. The other thing I would say is we all have different learning styles. Some of us learn visually, some of us learn through audio, some of us learn by doing, some of us learn by watching. And so I think it's important to, if you're going deep into training your customers, to understand the learning style of the person you're dealing with, and then to have assets or collateral that match that. Now, when it comes to doing that email, most people actually learn by doing, which is why we came up with our onboarding flow. But there are actually some people, I would say it's the minority, 5–10% of our customers perhaps, who would prefer to learn through abstraction and rules. And so for them, we have a very comprehensive manual, essentially a guide to Superhuman. It's a PDF that you can download, you can print out, you can keep it on your desk if you want. You can read through it, you can annotate it, be all old school. But for some people, that's actually a better learning style. So it's all about understanding the learning styles of your customers and then making sure that you have the material to support that style.
Anyone else want to add here anything? Okay, Elian?
Yeah, just a second. No, maybe I have a question that written before. How can companies implement takeaways from different onboarding processes? I'm not sure if we touched it before.
So it's a challenge because when people are focused on onboarding, they are not focused on improving the whole process. They are focused on the current customer and making them a success, and making sure that this onboarding person takes this feedback back and iterate on this and make improvements to the process is critical, right? It's not obvious as they're trying to maximize the experience for the customer, but then they need to also go back and having an open discussion about onboarding and catching those flips and ideas during the onboarding is critical for companies, and keep this open, keeping the team that actually working with the customers be able to influence the process, to make their own tweaks and changes, maybe to adopt them throughout the organization is something that we need to be very open about, because those people usually have great ideas as they do it on a daily basis. So keeping the process open and maybe sometimes per region and per vertical, allowing to experiment with onboarding, of course, not maybe with the top strategic customers, but then with the ones that you can play a bit with and see how it works, and maybe it will be amazing. Then usually those people are creative and they will come up with ideas. So it needs to be, it is, you know, a work in progress all the time. It needs to be communicated this way. Need to be very open with the team about this. I think this would be.
Thank you. So we reached the end of the discussion. Basically, we had people say thanks for the session and it was insightful. But if you have any last tip or anything you'd like to add for to lock this discussion, please. Ziv, something about honeymoons?
Yeah, I'll say for the one, maybe for the last thing Noah said, I think in the end, I think that it's relevant for everything, but onboarding for sure. I think that we are always 1% done. So always everyone should think about like how we can improve it, how we can do something. And you know, it doesn't matter if it's a CSM individual contributor, team leader, or myself. I think that we need to think about like what is the easiest thing that we can achieve. So something in my control. So this is why I'm using Superhuman, but not only. I want to be as responsive as possible when I'm answering someone, and this is fully in my control. The customer can ask for a feature. I will need to set the expectation and say no, but to answer an email that I just got, and this is the last email in my inbox, I can answer now and they get an answer in 1 minute. I think that's exceptional. So that's from me.
Huge +1 to that. Constantly improve, couldn't agree more. A different tip I think is very congruent with that is massively overinvest in onboarding. I think it was the first thing I said. It probably makes sense to be the last thing I say as well. It can, I'll give you an analogy, which is brand investment. Sometimes with brand investment, you'll find marketing leaders who don't want to do it because it's not measurable, unlike performance marketing, which is highly measurable. But all of the biggest and best technology companies in the world, they actually grew through brand, not performance marketing. And I think the same is true with customer success. Sometimes you're not going to have short-term metrics. Now, we happen to because we're a consumer company, but sometimes you won't have short-term metrics that show it works. But I would definitely make the investment. This actually came up in a leadership debate at Superhuman recently. You know, we have a self-service channel. It's very small, but it does exist. And the metrics are good, but they're not as good as the concierge channel. Notably, NPS is a bit lower. It's like 10 percentage points lower, which makes sense because, you know, you didn't get to meet somebody at Superhuman. And the pro that it has is it's significantly cheaper. It's, you know, it shaves 25, 30% off the cost of bringing that person on board. And so my leadership team were asking, well, shouldn't we just do that as opposed to spend all this money on onboarding people? And I said, you know, it may sound weird, but I would rather raise the money, spend the money, and at the end of the day, have the highest NPS possible, because ultimately that's how you build a gigantic company. It's having everyone in the world love you. It's not necessarily by being the most efficient when it comes to spending your dollars.
So my 2 cents about onboarding towards focus and value. Focus, you know, decide what you must do within the onboarding process and who is doing what. And on value, make sure that whatever you are doing is in the mindset of how do I drive value to my customer? It's not just the process, but it's the value that it brings.
And I would say that onboarding is a very exciting period, but it's also a period of changing habits. And this is something you need to take into account, like the technical aspect of implementing and doing the technical configuration, but there's also changing the habits of how an organization works or how the people are trained and so on. So you need to be there for this part as well and make sure that they gain those new habits, do it a few times and then it's there. But this is a process that even as people, it's really hard to change habits, and at work is not different. So part of the goals of the onboarding is helping them switch, and a lot of psychology behind this part.
Great. Thank you so much, Noah, Gali, Rahul, Ziv. and everyone for joining us. We're looking forward to our next discussion, hopefully soon. And have a great day, everyone. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.